Do you wonder how simple changes in understanding our sleep and addressing incontinence can drastically improve the quality of life for both caregivers and their loved ones? Today, we're diving into the intricate dance between sleep, incontinence, and the paramount quality of life for both caregivers and those they care for. My guest today is Deanna Vigliotta with a vast 30-year background in healthcare sales and sales management, now with Seni. Their mission is to support, provide information, and educate caregivers and healthcare professionals through initiatives and education, supporting those such as TIPA Snow, the Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center, and many more impactful organizations. A good night's sleep has profound effects on our health, mood, and overall well-being. Beyond just the physiological benefits, undisturbed sleep plays a crucial role in the emotional and psychological health of our aging loved ones. And in this delicate balance, caregivers find their rhythm, ensuring the best for those they care for while also tending to their own well-being. Join us today as we look at understanding the multifaceted impacts of sleep, exploring misconceptions about incontinence, and strategies to promote restorative rest. With insights from Deanna, we'll explore the profound link between quality sleep and an enriched quality of life. We also have conversation about some of Deanna's favorite people in the industry, explore the incredible initiatives that Seni supports, and shares the many ways that caregivers can enrich their approach to care, ensuring a holistic balance between physical, emotional, and psychological well-being for both themselves and their loved ones. Here is my interview with Deanna Vigliotta. Hi, Deanna. This is so fun. We get to do this today. So thank you for joining me.
Well, you know what? Honestly, sincerely, right back at you.
Oh,
I've enjoyed getting to know you, and I really appreciate this. I always appreciate platforms to be able to speak with people. So yeah, fun, and thank you.
yeah.
Thanks a million.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. My pleasure. I just want to start by sharing we had the opportunity to be at the Alzheimer's Dementia Resource Center gala together, and it was so fun to meet with not only you, but some of your team and the incredible work that they're doing over there. I know you have a connection with them. So, first, share with me a little bit more about that, how you've supported their work over the years and the people that you want to highlight and mention from that night. That was a really beautiful night.
Yeah, I have absolutely adore the ADRC. I live outside of Orlando. So when I first started with Seni, the industry that I'm in, you start looking for area connections and kind of work in your own backyard. And I love the people there. Karen Kuhn, who I'm happy and sad at the same time. They just announced, as you know, her retirement at the gala, but she is just a gem. Edith Gendron is one of the smartest people that I know when it comes to dementia. I tell this story in my old world, true story, radiology space. We had an exam that helped better evaluate people with Alzheimer's disease. And so this big corporate company, we went through all the trainings and everything else and over a time period. And then I spent about 45 minutes only with Edith. And I learned more. I always tell her to this day, I learned more in that 45 minutes than weeks of ongoing training. She just is a gem. So the people are just super kind, caring, committed. What they do is they help caregivers throughout throughout Central Florida. And so I always, when I have the opportunity to support, and my teammate Patty, who you met, is just a gem as well. And I just appreciate our company that allows us to get involved in community type of things. So we sponsor that event every year, and have worked with them for a number of years. And they do great things to help people, and can't say enough about them.
Yeah, it was so cool to hear the stories of how they support the families and the impact that they're making and the work that they were doing. It's been really, yeah, it was so great to hear more about that. So I'm excited to follow along and support them in the ways that I can as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was so glad that you were able to come. I mean, that's just to me part of the, it's fun, it's informative, it's educational, it's all about health. It has all the elements. But I really enjoyed hanging out with you and some of the other people at the table. And for me, it's somewhat like a mini reunion reunion, being able to spend some time back in Orlando. So I always walk away from there thinking, what a great night for all the right reasons.
Oh, I
So
bet. I bet. Yeah. And you guys do such a great job of working with and supporting other people and initiatives. Tell us some of your highlights of that for you and who you love to work with and support. I know you've got some cool people in that lineup.
yeah. Well, I tell you, right out of the gate, I love my team that I work with because it is truthfully my team in the field. We have a sales team up and down the East Coast, over in California, in Texas, and the people in the field are often the people that are bringing the ideas to the table. And hey, we should work with this organization for all the right reasons. Hey, we should work with this person for all the right reason. It all comes from a place of caring and commitment. And so some of the groups that we work with, Tipa Snow, we have great respect. But Tipa and she just started a foundation, the Snow Foundation, last year, but we've always been big supporters of what she's doing out there to help caregivers. And she's got a whole team behind her now. Simply love the Pioneer Network and the Greenhouse Project, that actually the Greenhouse Project and the Pioneer Network merged this year to form the Center for Innovation. They're big on educating people about the importance of a whole person approach to caring for people, mostly folks in nursing homes. And so they are just Penny Cook, Carol Dumont Stryker, Susan Ryan, and their entire team. We have great respect for. We work well with them. They're another group. You, Nicole, I love what you're doing, truthfully, out in the field and the podcast. I mean, any education is, to me, knowledge is power, and people crave it, need it, want it. We need more of it when I think it comes to caring for older adults. And so I have great respect for what you're doing as well. We also support, our industry is all about adult incontinence products. So we support the Wound Ostomy Continence Nurses Society. We support the National Association for Continence, a plethora. My teammates, they often will come and say, gee, there's an Alzheimer's Association walk. It makes sense to do it in the community because it's give back. We have a fairly new rep in California, and she came to me and said, there's this great organization called the Triumph Foundation. I wasn't even familiar with them in California. They are an amazing group that we now have a partnership, and they help people that are in wheelchairs with all types of spinal cord injuries, and they help people scuba dive, play soccer. I mean, things that is just unimaginable, but they provide hope and love and care. And so again, without my teammate, I wouldn't have known about that organization, but another great one. So there are just so many. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this company, that it's all encompassing.
It is, yeah, really holistic. And you're the master connector.
Thank you.
You're so great at that.
Know?
I know, and you love people and you love seeing people succeed and all the fun things that can come out of that. It really makes it special. Yeah.
Thanks. And you do too. So
Thank you.
it's I think that's, people align with people, I think, that are like-minded.
Yes. Yes, I agree. We find each other. We find each other. Yes. Well, I'm so happy that you can share with us today. I know our focus is going to really be more around sleep, which is a huge topic of conversation and so important to address and kind of dive into a little bit. So, thank you for sharing your perspective about it. Before we dive into sleep, I know that I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story and what brought you into this world of the company that you're working with and your heart behind that.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I actually spent a lot of time in the radiology space. Again, enjoyed working with people, had a long career in the radiology space. And then I started looking for a new role. I had spent with my last role for about 5 years, and started looking for a new role. And I kid you not, I was ready to accept another role. But I had a few months prior, applied for a small ad on Indeed that shared about hygiene products. And so anyway, I got a call from who is now the COO and the person that I report into. But I got an email that said, "Hey, I'm going to be in the Orlando area if you want to meet for a cup of coffee." And I was actually on my way to sign on with another role that I had done all the right things, all the research, all the PowerPoints, all the interviews, the shadowing, everything.
Yeah.
And well, I'm going to stop and just have coffee. And I went in and I met with COO, and I also met with what turned out to be one of my current colleagues as well. And from the minute we sat down, we were together for probably an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But I tell you, Nicole, it honestly, I don't know what it was. It just felt right and good in the gut that these two people were transparent, they were genuine, they were caring. I loved the mission. We talked about the role that was open, and I came out to the car, and I'll never forget. I called my husband and I said, "I don't know what it is. Something feels right here. It
Yeah.
feels good." And I accepted the role, and I have not looked back since. I just have never been so happy in the people I work with, the work that we're doing, the mission that we're on. All wonderful things to say. I'm in love with the products, the people, the mission, but it's all encompassing. It's like a time period back in time in school. I think, have you ever had a time when you were, whether it was junior high or high school, elementary, where you had your classes, that's your kind of day-to-day work, but then you had your extracurricular activities and you had your friends and what you were doing, and it was just an enjoyable time period. I feel like I'm back in school with all my extracurricular activities, but loving everything of it.
So good. It shows. It shows. The joy, yeah, it comes out. It really does. Well, okay, sleep. Big topic, big issue. It affects all of us, and more research is coming out about just how vital sleep is for our brain health, right? There's many components to that. So, in terms of from what you're seeing and your lens, how does inadequate sleep really affect the overall well-being of our aging parents, our older adults, even us as caregivers, right? All of us. And what are some of those common sleep challenges that you see?
Yeah. So, everybody, regardless of age, requires a good night's sleep. And so, what makes up for a good night's sleep, from what I'm seeing and hearing and reading and learning and continuing to learn, is you need undisturbed sleep. 7 to 9 hours for older adults is typically what we see recommended of undisturbed sleep. They have what they call sleep cycles, 4 to 5 different sleep cycles. And when you're able to get through all of those cycles, you wake up more alert, more engaged, happier. A nurse once told me to think of sleep almost like a file drawer. And during the day, if you pull that file drawer out, and old school, if you had papers within file folders and you pulled all the papers out and the paper clips and the file folders and you scattered everything, your body requires all those paper clips to go back in the appropriate papers, the papers to go back in the files, and the files to go back in order in the file drawer. When you have sleep, it's almost like you're resetting. And so it's better for hormone regulation, cell regeneration. Just again, those 4 to 5 sleep cycles are super important. And so for older adults, I know my teammates and I are trying ever so hard to shift mindset for people that are being cared for, whether it's in their homes or in skilled health or even in assisted living, to say, gee, let's get out of those habits that we've been into for 150 years of checking people every 2 hours, changing people every 2 hours that might be incontinent as a blanket approach. I'm not saying there are some residents that would need, and some people at their home for varied reasons that might need to be checked or woken up every 2 hours. But as a blanket approach, just rounding every 2 hours, in my opinion, is a habit that's been there. And I'm not kidding. It dates back from everything we see from the 1850s when the Crimea War was taking place, and Florence Nightingale started rounding Lady with the Lamp. It took her 2 hours to get through the wounded soldiers, and we're still doing it. So
Interesting. Yeah.
to me is almost like, how would we feel if we were, when people that have kids, right, when they're babies can probably
Oh,
relate
yeah.
very,
It's the worst. Oh, yeah.
right? It's
Hmm.
so why would we think that this would be appropriate for all older adults just as a blanket approach?
Yeah.
It just makes sense. And then if someone is being, having someone come into their apartment at night, if they're in an assisted living, is one example. There are many examples, but they may be sleeping. Someone comes in, oh, hey, you okay? They've woken them up. Now they're groggy. They could get up. They get up. Now they fall. And if
Hmm.
we rewind that example, they don't get up, they don't fall. And falls, I think, is the number one or number two reason why people over the age of 65 end up at the ER. So I think some of those falls can be eliminated
Hmm.
if people sleep undisturbed through the night.
Right, right. What are some of the other factors? I know temperature, right? If we're uncomfortable and things like that, what else are you seeing in that space?
Yeah, things like they recommend high density mattresses. I guess
Hmm.
years ago, from what I've heard, read, or learned, is that years prior there were low density mattresses, and that would have been a reason. But now we have high density mattresses, temperature to your point. The room, if it's too hot or too cold, someone may get up. Noise comes into play. There's a story, I can't remember who told me it, and I can't remember the details if it was a skilled health or an assisted living, but I thought this was interesting. Their washing machines and dryers were on the very bottom floor of their community.
Mm.
And they used to have a shift 6 to 2 where people would come and they would start. And then they shifted that a little bit to start at 8 o'clock because right above them were residents. And so some things that
Mm.
can make a difference for people just require, let's think about it. Let's evaluate it. Lighting comes into play. We're hearing more about music, and that relates kind of back. It's different from noise. Music is different from noise, but I know there are some folks out there I'm starting to work with. Do you know a guy named Jeff McSpadden by chance with Composure?
Oh gosh, that sounds familiar. I know I've seen that name, but yeah, tell me more.
Just met him recently, had some really great conversations. Myself and Jeff are actually going to be doing a presentation at the annual conference for the Center for Innovation about music therapy and sleep tied together. But there's
Hmm.
definitely some value, especially for folks that have neurocognitive decline, that different music therapies can help those folks get to sleep more comfortably. So
Hmm.
music, and it's different than noise, but music, noise, temperature, lighting, feeling safe, comfortable, all of those things come into play. But if someone, yeah, if they can get the go through the sleep cycles, have the undisturbed sleep, they are going to wake up happier, healthier. I always say happier, healthier, and whole.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth? Yeah. And you and I had talked a little bit about this. I had gone through some training with the community that I had worked with previously, and we were talking about sleep and looking at the amber light instead of the blue light. And so when we see that blue light, it wants to wake our brain up in the middle of the night. And to your point, we were looking at it from the perspective of when we would go in and assist our seniors with using the restroom in the middle of the night. We're turning on the fluorescent light. You've got cold feet on the floor and all of that, and just how much it disrupts the sleep. And so, can we reapproach that and add some more of that red amber light so that our bodies are not waking up? We're not turning on every light in the room, but maybe we're looking at a small lamp or something that aids in keeping our sleep more intact or the ability to fall asleep a little bit easier.
Yeah. And see, those are the things, like, I'm not the light expert, but this is what
Mm-hmm.
I love about these conversations, because
Mm.
you did share that with me. And then I went back and did a little, research as well. And absolutely, to your point with the red. And then I learned about warmer tones
Mm.
and golden colors and so forth. So it just keeps evolving with the
Yeah,
with the applications.
it
So
does.
yeah.
does. I know it's so interesting when we learn these little things. We can think about it or at least change our perspective a little bit or even take it into account, right? We maybe didn't think, oh, we should approach it differently. Or there's all these other components that can disturb us or interrupt that sleep. So how, for us as caregivers, do we effectively support and promote better sleep habits for our parents or the older adults that we care for? Where do we begin with looking at that?
Yeah. I think number one, I think it's important for everybody to have a good night's sleep. So I think caregivers could be adult children, caregivers could be spouses. I always go back to I'm going to give an example. If you have an adult child, maybe that adult child is caring for mom or dad. That adult child has a home care agency in during the day, or mom or dad is at an adult day services program, but there's help during the day and that adult child is off to work every day and they come home at night to be with mom or dad and to take over the care duties at that time and to spend time. That adult child needs just as much sleep as their mom or dad does. You both need sleep, because if mom or dad is up at night, that adult child is up at night, and you think of the ripple effects. I'm a big ripple effect person. Ripple effects can go positive or they can go negative. And on the positive, which I'll stick with, if that adult child caregiver gets a good night's sleep, they wake up more refreshed, more alert. That file drawer brain, so to speak, is back intact, and they can approach the day more refreshed. Lots of things to navigate when people are providing care for someone. Finances, it could be other siblings, it could be doctor's appointment, it could be medications, it could be just paying the bills. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I think you need to have everything going for you in terms of a good night's sleep to be able to navigate well. And then I think of, obviously, mom or dad. It goes back to, if they have a good night's sleep, they wake up more alert, more engaged, as I keep going back to. And now let's say that home care agency comes into the home, they're probably going to be a happier person, and they're going to be more talkative, more communicative with the people, happier environment. So it all can go positive. I look at the way that it could go negative if a person at home is with their adult child or a spouse. I think, well, geez, a spouse, I picture, especially older adults. If you had two, I'm just throwing a number, an age out, but you could have 85, 90, it makes no difference. But husband and wife, they've been together. One is taking care of the other. And let's say that if one is up and then the other's up, I can't even imagine what that looks like the next morning, day after day after day, of how you can possibly navigate all that life has going on in addition to just that sleep. So it's super important to be able to both get your sleep.
How do we have those conversations? What should we be looking for if we notice, okay, maybe we've got some concerns about it?
I think it's just important. My mom's independent and she's 82 years old. She just had a full knee replacement, but she started sleeping when my dad passed away. She started sleeping in a recliner, and it's a special, recliner. And sometimes she's going back upstairs to the bedroom and so forth. But I think it's important to have conversations. Are you comfortable? Do you sleep through the night? How many times do you get up? Someone told me recently that their mom or dad, they started noticing bruises. And I think this particular individual had dementia. So this person wasn't saying that, gee, I've fallen, I've had bruises, but just to be aware, I think, is super important. To be open, to have conversations, to see how much sleep someone is getting, and what is that person's mood and manner. Is it what you are used to, or has something changed? There's that saying, you can be, I'm probably not going to say it correctly, but you can be in a room full of people and you're not alone, but you can be lonely. And I think people think about that, just being aware, if this is my loved one that I care about, has any behavior changed recently? Is it the same person? And to have some of those conversations. We all know our parents, our loved ones, so forth, right? So it could be that you tag team it with your siblings.
Right.
I'll go from there. But I just think open conversation, and then knowing if you need some help as an adult child or a spouse or the person, to know that there are resources in every community. And I think the more we all as a society can serve as resources for older adults, we can help guide people and to get the help. I think there's a lot of help out there. That's the good. Sometimes it's difficult for people. We're all in healthcare, senior living, and so on. We know where to go. But other people may struggle coming from other backgrounds of where to go. But hopefully our web keeps growing and growing. A friend of a friend of a friend led me here, but someone that needs help. I'm curious, what do you see on your side of things as well, Nicole? Because like I say, I always like to learn from you of things.
Yeah, I think, in terms of sleep, I just have read so much research lately about how it affects our brain health. And so I was interviewing a woman actually a little bit ago, but the podcast is coming out this week. So we're in May, middle of May. And her husband was diagnosed with FTD, so frontal temporal dementia, and did not necessarily have the genetic marker. So everyone will need to go listen to this podcast with Allison Schreier. She's the founder of Xenia. But what they had learned after doing some testing, it took a long time for them to get an actual diagnosis because he was young, I think 47 years old, if I'm remembering correctly. And what they had discovered is when she first met him, he needed to go and nap during the day, and he was 27 years old. And she thought, that's kind of odd, but okay. I guess that's, how he kind of operates. And fast forward, discovered that he had actually suffered for many years from sleep apnea and was not adequately sleeping. And, was that a contributing factor to what was going on in his brain? So I think even looking at it from the overall wellness perspective of, we know that, I think before we'd, work hard, I'll sleep when I'm dead, all those terminologies that we use, but just how serious it is and how vital it is that we do have uninterrupted sleep, that we can navigate. And, one of the other things I had in my training was this explanation of deep sleep really heals our body, and that REM sleep really heals our mind. And so we need all of it to go through those different cycles and to be able to be a whole person. So yeah, am thinking about that even as myself, or even as my kids, as they're growing and developing, making sure that, are we creating environments that are optimal for our sleep?
Yeah, I completely agree. I
Yeah.
completely. It's the more you read, the more you do realize that it is all ages.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that too, some of those nights, you have one of those nights where the temperature was perfect, the blankets were warm enough, but not too warm, the
Yeah.
pillow, and you feel great getting up, sometimes even ahead of an alarm, right?
Yeah.
Because that sleep was like, I had the perfect amount.
Right.
And so I think we can all be so fortunate to have that type of sleep every
Yeah.
single night. It just ripples out to a positive outcome.
It does. It does. And with your expertise looking at it from the lens with incontinence and how that can affect our sleep, but also quality of life for not only us as the caregiver, because it's a huge undertaking, but also for the older adult. And so, what are some different things we can think about and manage and address that? And that's a sensitive topic, so any support on how we even broach that conversation, b how does it affect our life in a big way?
Yeah. So, I'm going to say with incontinence in general, nobody wants to be incontinent. I can't think of one person that would say, I want to be incontinent. Nobody wants to be incontinent. So our philosophy at our company is, let's start from a place of, is there any level of incontinence that can be improved for people. And so you talk about, we read a lot about the importance of Kegel exercises that can help being proactive. For older adults, it could be looking at each individual adult, again, not a blanket approach, but looking at each individual adult and looking at fluid intake, looking at side effects of medication, looking at those things we talked about, noise at night, temperature, mattresses, all those things to look at and say, this individual that may be incontinent, is there anything here that we can change, tweak, and raise that level up from being incontinence to a level of less incontinence, if that makes sense. And a lot of people you can, when you really take the time, when people take the time that are involved in senior living to do that, you can. For folks that you say, okay, well, we can't do that, or we tried that, we've got to this level, but that they need a product. And I'm going to go kind of back and forth here, or whatever, that might need a product. Then it's super important to look at a product that has certain features that's going to allow that person to sleep uninterrupted through the night. And a product that's fully breathable means the skin can breathe. So if somebody voids, their skin should not break down. If someone's sleeping peacefully through the night and they have a product that's super absorbent, so if they do void during the night, that moisture is whipped away from their skin, letting them feel comfortable, letting them feel dry. Super important, because again, they won't wake up if those things happen. A product that has leak guards, that keeps everything contained. Meaning they shouldn't soil their sheets, they shouldn't soil their clothing. Those are things that wake people up. So all of these features of a good quality product help keep people sleeping through the night. And you have to couple that with, if the product works really well, let's not go in and check and change them strictly if they're incontinence. I separate the demographic of people out. If someone needs for other reasons, yep, but not a blanket approach. So super important for good, high quality products to shift the mindset of, we do not have to have a blanket approach to waking people up. And then how do you broach the subject with people that maybe are living on their own or have all their faculties, but they're becoming incontinent? And I think you do it delicately. We're trying very hard, my teammates and I, to break down the stigmas, the barriers, and to look at this more from not a incontinence is not something that's it's not a normal part of aging. It's not a normal part of aging, but it is a common part of aging. But there's usually something triggering it, whether it's neurocognitive decline, or maybe my brain tells me that I have to use the toilet, but my legs just don't work so well. So when you understand why someone is in fact incontinent, or maybe becoming incontinent, you can pivot a little bit. You know, if mom or dad is at home and they're not quite making it to the bathroom, instead of talking about why you didn't make it to the bath, it could talk about, your legs are okay. Should we go and get these checked? Do they hurt you? You know, things that are just can be pivoted a little bit. And then anybody that does have an accident or void, to me, common sense, you don't make a big deal of it. You're there to help and support and guide. So I think it's just having conversations from a place of love and caring and from the heart. I want to help you. I want to keep you safe. What can we do? And then another thing is, there are products for all different types of needs. And so you can have someone who has their faculties. They might not feel comfortable in what we call a pull-up or a brief that has tabs. Well, there are pads now that can be worn overnight, and that can be enough, but it could feel more common or typical, maybe to a feminine hygiene pad that someone has worn. They're very different products, But again, someone in their mind could think, oh, okay, I know I have this issue, but I'm okay with that, and then sizing is important. So I think I think anything's possible when you come from a point of caring, not a quick fix, right? And then sometimes things too, you try things and someone may say, I'll wear this product, but it's too bulky for me. Okay, well, wait a minute, let's back it up. Let's try this product instead. So different ways to pivot. But I think, yeah, letting people feel that it's okay. It's okay. We're here to help. That
Be
would be my
supportive, absolutely, and have the conversations. And you had mentioned too, when we don't address some of those issues, there can be those negative clinical outcomes. What are some of those that we need to be aware of that could potentially take place?
I'll go clinical and social is the way that I break things down. From a clinical perspective. If a product is not fully breathable, you run the risk of skin breaking down. And so I'm going to use an example in an assisted living community or memory care or skilled health. I think people in the senior living and healthcare industry all come from a good place of intent. So I always clarify and say negative outcomes more often than not do not come from a place of ill will. It comes from a whole host of variables, but it's never intent, I don't think. And so anyway, if you have a product that someone's wearing and it is not fully breathable, and let's say you have a 7 to 3 shift and a 3 to 11 shift, and you might be doing your rounding, and Mrs. Smith was supposed to be checked or changed at 2 o'clock and something happened and she didn't get assistance with toileting or changing or what have you when she was supposed to, and now we're in a shift change and something else happens, or you have a lack of caregiver staffing on that particular shift, and now she has sat in a product and has voided in it and it's touching her skin. If it's not a fully breathable product, that's where you can start to have your skin breakdowns. So we see and hear that happens. Urinary tract infections with a high performing incontinence product. They have inside, Nicole, what they call an even distribution layer. When somebody voids, the moisture goes in different directions and it's whipped away. If you have a product that you were to tear up in the middle, and we're showing clinical staff this now, our products, for example, and other high performing, they do not have a plastic backing on that even distribution layer. If you have that even distribution layer with a plastic backing, you can also have skin breakdown because plastic can be more of a microclimate for moisture and sweating and so forth and heat, and that can cause the pressure breakdowns. But also UTIs, if you have microscopic pooling of urine, women have shorter urethras. So if that goes back up into the bladder, you can get a UTI. And then if you go to the doctors, right, that doctor's going to write you the script. No ill intent. Here's your script for your UTI. But if you come back and you're in the same product doing the same thing, back you go round robin. So we're trying to shift some of those things. In terms of sleep, right, skin that's broken down, that's painful. That's not going to be a good night's sleep.
Right.
UTIs, painful, not a good night's sleep. But here's the biggie that I think of. And I put it in the simplest of terms. Right now, if you and I took a little bit of water the size of a quarter and we put it on the chairs that we're on right now, and you and I sat in that quarter, just a quarter worth of water, it would feel uncomfortable to us. And we would probably say, let's go change and we'll come back, right? So you picture a lot of water all over sheets, garments, and now a person wakes up. They're wet, they might be cold. This doesn't feel good naturally, right? And so they get up, it's the middle of the night, they're groggy, they fall. Now we have a much bigger problem. Now, where does that lead? All hands on deck in a long-term care community to help that person, but it's a lot of worry, stress for the resident, for the caregivers, for the executive director, for the family. Off that person goes out to the hospital, probably not for a good, outcome. People that are living at home, same thing, rewind that. A spouse caring for someone, if their loved one voids, they have to get up, they have to change the sheets, they have to help. They may fall. They're groggy, they're helping the person, they could fall. So clinically, UTIs, falls, pressure sores, in my mind, are the top three without a good quality product that you run that risk. And then I think social isolation, we all learned, I think you'll agree, right? Everything we've read through COVID, social isolation has negative impacts on our health. And my team and I have been talking since day one that we joined the company, say, wait a minute, for someone who is incontinent, if you don't have confidence and dignity to go out, they've been socially isolated. Those folks have been socially isolated for a long time, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Unfortunately, people may continue to be socially isolated. So when you have a product that has leak guards, that doesn't squeak, that's comfortable, and you can go out and really feel confident, it's discreet, no one knows I'm in it, I'm okay. If I void, it's going to be okay. No one's going to notice. There's no odor. You can go out and you can enjoy life. And maybe if you're an older adult, it's the adult child taking you out, you can both enjoy the theater together because one's not worried about the other. And you just kind of put it on the back burner and say, it'll be okay. It will be okay. So that's, to me, the things from a social perspective. I kind of compare it to at any age. If any of us had a stomach bug, if you or I were supposed to go shopping on Saturday and I had a really bad stomach bug, I'm going to probably call you up and say, you know what, Nicole, not feeling all that well. I got a bug. We'll do it next weekend, right? For people that are incontinent, that can become, unfortunately, a daily way of living. That's something my team and I are trying to change.
Yeah, I know. We don't want to miss out on those social connections at all. Yeah. And, we're talking with the lens that those that are struggling with incontinence. We do know that there are many people that do not, and it's not that normal part of aging, although it's something that we have to interact with. What are some things that we can do as caregivers when we're communicating with our healthcare professional about some of those concerns? Like, how do we start to dive into what's going on or track that a little bit? Are there tools we can use that help us with that?
Yeah, so there are different bladder diaries that are out there. Our company has one that a doctor that we work with, Dr. Laird, she's a geriatrician, helped us put together a bladder diary. There are different formats to them, but they're typically 3 days where a caregiver can help a person write down what time are they being assisted with toileting or voiding, what are they eating, what are they drinking, and they can actually take that to a provider, a clinical provider, and that provider can review that and then look at, okay, where do we go from here based on those findings? So it's being mindful and understanding what's happening with that individual, and then finding out why is it happening, and then can we fix it? I use an example of a side effect of a medication, for example. That could be a very easy fix to something. If, okay, this happens here, we're going to, cut back on here. And that can be something that can be an easy fix. So I think it's really evaluating, like anything else, evaluating why is it happening? When is it happening? Who is it happening to? And how do we fix it if we can? And how do we manage it if we can't?
Right. Yes. And there's got to be some great spots where you like to direct people for that education or resource or any, what should we be looking at when we're looking at maybe those technologies or products that can help us, assist us with that whole process?
Yeah, there's a great website called the National Association for Continence. I would recommend it. I think it's nafc.org. I'll have to check, but I believe it's nafc.org. And that is a robust website that has resources, blogs, all types of a plethora of information or different types of incontinence, because people could have light incontinence, moderate, severe, urinary versus fecal. I mean, the list goes on. And so that's a national organization that I would highly recommend for folks that might be thinking about, okay, I've got to look at something and get some resources. And then I think in the communities, the area agencies on aging can help guide, the gala that we started talking about at the beginning, Alzheimer's and Dementia Research. I mean, most of these communities will have the Alzheimer's Association, people with dementia, but also Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. I mean, it goes on and on. So people that can lead to resources, I think would be able to find the information. Certainly our website, I know you're going to have my contact information, but we're always open to helping people with resources.
Right, absolutely. And thank you so much. It helps to know. And I think when we share right today, because our limited time, we talk in broad terms, but we know that each of us are working with our loved ones. They might have different diagnoses or medical complications. And so when we can dial into what those specific ones are, I think that looking to that resource, then we can be directed in how do we really support them in this. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, our pleasure. I think too, even just having conversations with providers, there's a fear of embarrassment, trust. I've worked with doctors for a long, long time. We're all human beings at the end of the day. They study anatomy. They know the human body. Nothing is going to show any clinical provider out there that they haven't heard. And out of the millions and millions and millions of people in this world, whatever the concern is, human beings at the end of the day. And there's no human being that I know of that, has the one thing that no one else has or has had, or no one's ever heard of it. So
exactly. We're in it together and we're not alone. And so it's okay to have some of those more difficult conversations. And the more we do it, right, the easier I think it becomes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. I think we learn from each other and how our brains work and how we think about different things. So I appreciate that. And I'm so glad we could talk today. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Nicole. I really do. I think what you're doing, even umbrella level with all these different resources, I mean, in and of itself, your podcast, because you touch on so many different components of people that have some challenges as they age, but also for the caregivers that are taking care. I mean, your podcast is just another great resource for people to go to. It's a go-to. So I think that's super important as well.
Thank you. I hope so. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thanks a million. I really appreciate chatting with you.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.